the first piece we're going to be talking about is this Red Meowntain one, where I used an overlay image, or an underlaid image, I should say, to help build my illustration. And then I made my own creative changes to it by adding cats and my own color palette and stuff. So we're going to just be kind of like looking at my time-lapse replay, and then I'll be talking about what aspects and what tools I was using while we look through it. Okay, so I started with a blank canvas here, and I added the photo that I was using as a reference, and then I had it at a lower opacity. And then the tool that I used was just the Procreate pencil brush over top on another layer. And then once I was happy with the sketch, I got rid of my underlaid photo reference, and then I started adding my own cats to it. Same with the Procreate pencil. I did these on another layer as well, so that I could have kind of an idea of where they were going to be on top of this drawing of the mountain. So all the flowers, every aspect that I kind of wanted to interact with it, I did it on a separate layer, so that then when I did my final line work, I could then not add aspects that were underneath the cats and stuff like that. So now I've started the line work, and so now you can see it's a little cleaner. I'm getting rid of anything that was behind the cats, and then I move into the trees. And that was actually really, really tedious doing it like that. And if you know about Procreate's drag to fill option, it would have been really, really tedious to do that for all these trees. So what you'll see in a second is I actually ended up drawing the shape of these trees and then dragging to fill. I've done the background. I work from the bottom up, so I do the sky first. And now you can see here that I'm outlining the trees, and then as I go, depending on what your illustration is, it might be easier to just drag and drop, fill your shapes. And also, like, I have my line work mostly touching, but sometimes if they're not, it's easier just to draw the shape, and then you can interact with it a little bit better when you're filling it in later. I ended up using both clipping masks and alpha lock for this one. So I would start with alpha lock, where you're just, each color was its own layer essentially, or each kind of shape set. So all the trees were their own layer, all the grass was its own layer, and I alpha locked it so that I could then add details into it. And so now see here, I have the reference photo back where I'm using it kind of for some color ideas. So I have this all alpha locked so that I'm not having to worry about avoiding the trees or anything. It's just the grass is its own layer. And then I get into doing the trees and the same sort of thing. So I think I end up with quite a few layers, at least 3 for my color. I believe it was more though. Yeah, because the flowers as well. So it was 4 kind of significant layers, and then I ended up going over top as well for little details. So you can see what I love about the alpha lock is that I don't have to worry about avoiding like that grass. It just doesn't touch it. So it definitely made it a lot less tedious. So that shape filling saved me time in the long run, but it depends on what you're illustrating and kind of what your process is. I like kind of fat brush strokes. So it worked best for me because then I didn't have to be as careful when I was filling it in. I'm not really a landscape person, so definitely using the underlay to even just get it started and then use it for referencing for colors really, really helped me get it kind of realistic-ish looking. So just make sure when you're building it, I just try to be really meticulous when I start, so that when I'm getting into the fun stuff, I'm not like having to go back and like redo, or I realize that I've drawn everything on the same layer and it's just going to be more tedious. So I did all the cats, since they aren't touching, I did them all on their same layer. I alpha locked it, and then I was able to just kind of paint. So it definitely has a lot of interesting aspects in Procreate that I would definitely recommend taking advantage of. For this one, alpha lock worked great. For other pieces, I find alpha lock is a little bit destructive because you're going over your line work. So sometimes I find it's better to use a clipping mask because you're not going to be destroying that line work, but you're still like restricting your artwork to that shape. So it just depends what you're doing. For these ones, it was like each layer was kind of a very basic color, but if you're doing something like a portrait of a person or something, maybe clipping mask works better. Or sometimes I'll do like alpha lock, and then I want to do shadows on everything. So I would do a clipping mask on top of that so that I'm not destroying my color palette maybe. Or just you just want to be able to do different things. So like I want my shadow at 25% opacity, and then I want my color work to be at 100% opacity. So having those on the same layer might be a little bit difficult to manage, like trying to draw with like a brush that has less opacity. So instead doing that as a clipping mask on top, I find can be a little bit easier to get through.